In just 51 seconds, one of Hollywood's most respected actors completely destroyed a talk show host on live television, exposing years of disrespect and condescension before storming off the set in what witnesses are calling the most explosive exit in talk show history. What started as a conversation about movies turned into an all-out war that left Bill Maher speechless and Samuel L. Jackson walking away from cameras that couldn't look away. Before we get into this absolute chaos, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the confrontations they don't want you to see, and the moments that reveal who these celebrities really are behind closed doors. Hit that subscribe button now, because you won't want to miss what we uncover next. Last night on Real Time, the tension in the studio was thick. From the moment Samuel L. Jackson walked onto the stage, the veteran actor, known for his powerful performances and no-nonsense attitude, settled into the guest chair with his usual confidence. Bill Maher opened with his signature smirk, the one that's become his trademark over decades of interviewing celebrities and politicians. "Samuel L. Jackson, welcome back," Maher said, leaning back in his chair with that casual arrogance he's perfected. "Always great to have someone from actual Hollywood here instead of these wannabe influencers." Jackson nodded politely, but anyone watching closely could see something in his expression. A tightness around his eyes, a slight tension in his jaw. The legendary actor has never been one to suffer fools, and tonight that would become crystal clear. "Thanks for having me, Bill," Jackson replied, his voice measured and controlled. Maher dove right in, barely letting Jackson get comfortable. "So let's talk about your new movie. Another action film. Tell me, when are you going to do something with real substance? I mean, you're a talented guy, but it seems like you've been phoning it in for the last decade." The studio audience went quiet. It was an insult wrapped in a question, delivered with Maher's typical smugness. Jackson's expression didn't change, but his eyes grew colder. "Phoning it in?" Jackson repeated slowly. "That's an interesting way to start a conversation, Bill. Come on, you know what I mean," Maher continued, waving his hand dismissively. "You're doing comic book movies, action flicks, voice work. Where's the real acting? Where's the depth? You used to do serious films." Jackson leaned forward slightly. "So you're saying that entertaining millions of people worldwide, creating characters that audiences love, and being part of stories that inspire kids isn't real work?" "I'm saying it's not Pulp Fiction," Maher shot back with a laugh. "It's not the Samuel L. Jackson we used to respect." The word respect hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Jackson's face remained calm, but anyone who knew him could see the storm brewing beneath the surface. "We used to respect?" Jackson said quietly. "That's fascinating, Bill. Tell me more about who we is and when exactly you stopped respecting my work." Maher realized he might have pushed too far, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. It's what he always does. "Look, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You're a great actor who's wasting his talent on garbage. Someone has to say it. No, what you're doing is sitting in your comfortable chair, making millions to give your opinions, while dismissing the work that other people pour their hearts into," Jackson replied, his voice growing stronger. "You think you're some kind of arbiter of what's valuable? You think your opinion matters more than the millions of people who enjoy these films?" "My opinion is what I'm paid for," Maher said defensively. "And yeah, I think someone with your talent should be doing better work." Jackson laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Better work? Let me tell you something about work, Bill. I show up every single day, giving everything I have to whatever project I'm part of. I don't rank my jobs by how much they'll impress critics or talk show hosts. I do them because I love acting and I respect the audience." "But surely you can admit," Maher tried to interrupt. "No, let me finish," Jackson cut him off sharply. "You sit here every week, making jokes, giving your takes, acting like you're smarter than everyone else. But what have you created? What have you built? You tear down, Bill. That's your job. You tear down everyone and everything, and then you act like you're doing the world a favor." The audience was completely silent now. This wasn't the playful banter they were used to. This was real. This was uncomfortable. The cameras kept rolling as Maher shifted in his seat, trying to regain control of the interview. "I think you're being a bit sensitive here," Maher said with a nervous chuckle. I'm just trying to have an honest conversation. Honest? Jackson's voice rose slightly. You want honest? Honestly, I think you've been coasting on the same tired act for years. You think being cynical makes you smart. You think insulting people makes you edgy. But really, Bill, you're just a guy who's gotten comfortable being mean. Maher's face flushed red. Now wait a minute. No, you wait a minute. Jackson interrupted again, his famous intensity now fully on display. You invited me here. You asked me to come on your show. And within 2 minutes, you're telling me my work is garbage, and that you don't respect me. What kind of host does that? I didn't say I don't respect you. Maher protested weakly. You said we used to respect my work. Jackson fired back. That's past tense, Bill. That means you don't anymore. Own what you said. The host tried to laugh it off, but it came out forced and awkward. You're twisting my words. I know exactly what you meant, Jackson said, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet tone he's famous for in his films. You meant that unless I'm doing the kind of work that impresses you and your friends, I'm wasting my time. You meant that commercial success and connecting with audiences doesn't matter. You meant that your narrow definition of real art is the only one that counts. Maher attempted to steer the conversation back to safer ground. Look, can we just talk about the movie? Let's start over. Start over? Jackson looked at him incredulously. You just spent 5 minutes insulting my career and now you want to promote the movie you just called garbage? Do you hear yourself? The tension in the studio was unbearable. Crew members stood frozen, unsure whether to keep filming or cut to commercial. The audience didn't dare make a sound. This was spiraling out of control, and everyone knew it. I think you're overreacting, Maher said. And it was possibly the worst thing he could have said. Jackson's eyes went wide. Overreacting? Overreacting? Bill, I've spent over 4 decades in this industry. I've worked with the best directors, the best actors, the best writers. I've won awards. I've broken box office records. I've created characters that will outlive both of us. And you have the nerve to sit there and tell me I'm overreacting when you disrespect all of that? I'm not disrespecting, Maher started. Yes, you are. Jackson's voice boomed through the studio. That's exactly what you're doing. You're disrespecting me, my choices, my career, and every single person who's enjoyed my work. And you're doing it with this smug attitude, like you're enlightening me. Maher tried a different approach, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. Samuel, I think you're taking this too personally. We're just having a discussion. Don't you dare patronize me, Jackson warned. Don't you sit there and tell me how I should feel about you insulting my life's work. You don't get to do that. The host's frustration was starting to show. Fine. You want me to say it? I think you've sold out. I think you took the easy path. I think you could have been one of the greats, but instead you chose paychecks over prestige. The studio gasped. Even Maher's most loyal audience members couldn't believe what they were hearing. He'd gone too far, way too far. And everyone knew it, except apparently him. Jackson stared at Maher for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was ice cold. Let me tell you about selling out, Bill. Selling out is pretending to be provocative while actually just being an asshole. Selling out is building a career on being controversial without ever actually standing for anything. Selling out is judging other people's choices while never putting yourself on the line. That's not fair, Maher protested. Not fair? Jackson laughed bitterly. You just called me a sellout on your show, in front of your audience, and you're worried about what's fair. Bill, you wouldn't know fair if it slapped you in the face. Maher's voice grew defensive and sharp. I have every right to my opinion about your career choices, and I have every right to tell you that your opinion is worthless. Jackson shot back. You want to know why? Because it comes from a place of ignorance and arrogance. You haven't walked in my shoes. You haven't faced the challenges I've faced. You haven't made the choices I've had to make, but you sit in judgment like you're qualified to do so. I'm a critic. That's literally my job, Maher argued. No, you're a commentator who thinks he's a critic, Jackson corrected him. Real critics analyze and evaluate. They try to understand the work in context. You just snipe from the sidelines and call it insight. The host was clearly rattled now, his usual composure cracking. You know what? Maybe you should leave if you're going to be this hostile. Hostile? Jackson stood up from his chair. I'm hostile? You invite me here, insult me repeatedly, dismiss my entire career, and I'm the hostile one. You're making a scene, Maher said, his voice rising. Good, Jackson shouted. Maybe more people should make scenes when they're disrespected. Maybe more people should stand up to bullies like you who hide behind comedy and honest opinions while really just being cruel. The studio erupted in whispers and shocked reactions. This was beyond anything anyone had expected. Maher stood up too, trying to assert some authority. If you're going to act like this, then yes, you should leave, Maher said coldly. Jackson laughed again, that same bitter laugh. Oh, I'm leaving, Bill, don't worry. But not because you're kicking me off. I'm leaving because I have too much respect for myself to sit here and let you continue this bullshit. Fine, leave, Maher shouted back, his famous cool completely gone. I will, Jackson replied, starting to remove his microphone. But let me say one more thing before I go. I think you've said enough, Maher snapped. No, I haven't, Jackson said firmly. Here's what you need to understand, Bill. The problem isn't that you have opinions. The problem is that you think having opinions makes you important. You've built an entire career on tearing people down, and you've convinced yourself that makes you brave, or smart, or necessary. Get off my stage, Maher demanded. It's not your stage, Bill. It's a stage that a network lets you use. And the only reason they let you use it is because people tune in to watch you be an asshole. That's your contribution to the world. That's your legacy. Being an asshole. Maher's face was bright red now. Security! Get him out of here. I don't need security. I'm walking out on my own, Jackson said, pulling off his microphone and tossing it onto the chair. Unlike you, I don't need anyone to fight my battles for me. The actor turned to face the audience directly. I apologize to all of you for this. You came here for entertainment, not for this circus. But sometimes, you have to stand up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. You're done in this business, Maher shouted, losing all composure. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did here. Jackson turned back to face him one last time, and his expression was pure contempt. What I did here? Bill, all I did was refuse to let you disrespect me. If that makes me the villain in your story, then I'll wear that badge proudly. At least I'll be a villain with integrity, which is more than you can say. Get out! Get out! Maher was screaming now, pointing toward the exit. I'm going, Jackson said calmly, his composure returning. But Bill, let me leave you with this thought. In 20 years, people will still be watching my movies. They'll still be quoting my characters. They'll still be remembering the joy and excitement I brought to their lives. But you'll just be remembered as the guy who was mean to people for money. Think about that. Jackson started walking toward the exit, his head held high. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or remain silent. Most chose silence, watching in stunned disbelief as one of Hollywood's biggest stars walked off the set of one of television's most popular talk shows. Maher stood at his desk, breathing heavily, his face still flushed with anger and embarrassment. Fine. Leave. We don't need you anyway. We'll get someone with actual intelligence to fill your spot. Jackson paused at the edge of the stage, turned slightly, and called back. Intelligence isn't about knowing everything, Bill. It's about knowing when to shut the hell up. You should try it sometime. With that, the legendary actor disappeared backstage, leaving behind a studio in chaos. Maher stood at his desk, looking around at his shocked audience, at his frozen crew, at the cameras that had captured every moment of the disaster. Well, Maher said weakly, trying to recover. That was unexpected. But no one was listening. The audience sat in uncomfortable silence. The crew looked at each other in disbelief. The show's producers were undoubtedly panicking in the control room, trying to figure out how to salvage what was left of the episode. Backstage, crew members reported that Jackson didn't storm off in anger. Instead, he walked out calmly, thanked the staff members he passed, and left the building with his dignity fully intact. He didn't need to rage or throw things or make more of a scene. He'd said what he needed to say, stood up for himself, and walked away on his own terms. Back in the studio, Maher tried desperately to continue the show, but the energy was gone. The magic was broken. Whatever momentum the episode had was destroyed by the confrontation that no one saw coming but everyone would remember. The host attempted a few jokes, tried to explain his perspective, but it all fell flat. The audience gave polite, uncomfortable laughter at best. Mostly, they sat in silence, processing what they'd just witnessed. "Look, I stand by what I said," Maher told the cameras during what should have been a commercial break but stayed live. "Samuel L. Jackson is a great actor who's wasting his talent. If he can't handle honest criticism, that's his problem, not mine." But even as he said it, Maher's voice lacked conviction. He looked shaken, uncertain. The confidence that usually radiated from him was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like doubt. One audience member later described the atmosphere as like watching a car crash in slow motion. Everyone knew they were witnessing something significant, something that would be talked about for years to come, but no one quite knew how to react in the moment. The remaining guests for the evening either canceled or were quietly removed from the schedule. How could anyone follow that? How could the show possibly continue as normal after such a spectacular implosion? Maher wrapped up the episode early, something he almost never does. He thanked his audience with less enthusiasm than usual, made a half-hearted plug for next week's show, and signed off with visible relief. As the cameras stopped rolling and the studio lights dimmed, the reality of what had happened began to sink in for everyone involved. This wasn't just another heated debate or slightly uncomfortable interview. This was a complete breakdown of the host-guest dynamic, a total collapse of professional courtesy, and a public humiliation for one of television's most prominent personalities. Stagehands who'd worked on the show for years said they'd never seen anything like it. "Bill usually keeps his cool even when things get intense," one crew member explained. "But tonight, he just lost it. And Sam never even raised his voice until the very end. He stayed calm and composed while Bill fell apart." The makeup artist who'd prepared Jackson before the show shared that he'd seemed perfectly pleasant and professional backstage. "There was no indication he was planning anything," she said. "He was friendly, cracking jokes, just being himself. Whatever happened out there wasn't premeditated. It was a genuine reaction to how Bill treated him." Security guards confirmed that Jackson left the building without incident, even stopping to sign an autograph for a staff member's daughter on his way out. "He was a complete gentleman," the guard reported. "Couldn't have been nicer. Whatever happened in there, he didn't bring that energy out here with him." Meanwhile, inside the studio, Maher reportedly retreated to his dressing room immediately after the show ended. Usually, he mingles with audience members and chats with staff, but not tonight. Tonight, he disappeared without a word to anyone. The question everyone in the studio was asking was simple: how did it go so wrong, so fast? The interview had started normally enough, with standard greetings and a seemingly innocuous question about Jackson's new film. But within minutes, it had deteriorated into one of the most uncomfortable confrontations in talk show history. Many pointed to Maher's opening question as the catalyst, suggesting that a guest has been phoning it in for a decade isn't exactly a welcoming way to start an interview. But Maher has always prided himself on asking tough questions, on not giving celebrities an easy ride. The problem was, he'd misjudged his guest. Samuel L. Jackson isn't some young starlet desperate for publicity. He's not a politician used to hostile interviews. He's a Hollywood legend with nothing to prove and no reason to tolerate disrespect. And that's exactly what he'd been given from the moment he sat down: disrespect. Audience members filed out of the studio in small groups, talking quietly among themselves about what they'd just witnessed. Some defended Maher, arguing he was just doing his job. Others sided completely with Jackson, saying the host had crossed a line. But everyone agreed on one thing: they'd just seen something extraordinary. "I've been coming to this show for 5 years," one regular audience member said. "I've seen heated debates, awkward moments, tense exchanges, but I've never seen anything like this. This was personal, this was real, and it was brutal." Another viewer put it more bluntly: Bill got his ass handed to him, and he deserved it. The studio that had been filled with excited energy just an hour before now felt heavy and subdued as the last audience members trickled out. The crew moved quietly, efficiently breaking down the set for the night, but the usual chatter and jokes were absent. Everyone was still processing what had happened. In the control room, producers faced the monumental task of deciding what to do with the footage. Do they air it as is? Do they edit it down? Do they scrap it entirely? The confrontation was so intense, so personal, that broadcasting it could have serious repercussions. But not broadcasting it might be even worse, especially if word got out about what had happened. As the night crew took over and the main staff headed home, one thing was clear. This was a moment that would define both men's careers in different ways. For Jackson, it was a powerful statement about self-respect and refusing to be diminished. For Maher, it was a stark reminder that sometimes the person sitting across from you won't play along with your game. The empty studio held the echoes of raised voices and uncomfortable silences. The chair where Samuel L. Jackson had sat still bore the slight warmth of his presence. The microphone he'd torn off and tossed aside still lay on the cushion where he'd left it. And somewhere in Los Angeles, two men were processing the same event from very different perspectives, knowing that when the sun rose tomorrow, the entire world would be talking about what had happened tonight on Real Time with Bill Maher.